Hello, I'm Samuel Thomas. Welcome to today's edition of Between the Lines. We have a special guest with us today. She's been with us before, Terri Fivash, but the best-selling author of Joseph and Ruth and Boaz has a new book series coming out, 6 books to be exact. In fact, so new, all we have is the cover. Here it is, Dahveed. She's going to tell us about who this David is in the Bible and who he really wants to be known as in history, or at least those who wrote about him. Terri, welcome. Thanks for coming back to be with us.
Thank you.
I want to ask you a question. When you set out to write 6 books on David, tell me, did you kind of like not have anything else to do?
I did not set out to write 6 books on Dahveed. I set out to write 3. The original plan was to write a book on David and Michal, and then another one on David and Abigail, and a third one on David and Bathsheba. But as I got into writing the first one, it very neatly split itself in 2. And I quickly realized I'm writing 2 books here, not just one. When the same thing happened with the second book, I said to myself, it's going to happen with the third one too. So now I'm looking at a series of 6 books instead of just 3.
Okay, take us through the titles. Tell us who you're going to be writing about as you've taken David and stretched him out over 6 focus points.
Okay, I'll try to remember them. Now, be aware that these are tentative titles only. I don't know if this is what it'll be. The first one, of course, is Yahweh's Chosen. The second one is Yahweh's Warrior. The third one is Yahweh's Fugitive. The fourth one is Yahweh's Soldier, I believe. The fifth one is Yahweh's General. And the last one is Yahweh's King.
When you look at the life of David, because you have now obviously had to go ahead and look at his entire life, over the landscape of his life, what kind of person are you actually looking at?
What kind of person when it comes to David? One who was very much human. We see an awful lot with biblical characters of trying to make them into moral lessons or moral examples, and they end up being kind of cardboard cutouts. You know, it's difficult to believe that they're actually a person. With David, because we know so much about him, it's difficult to make him into a cardboard cutout because we know too much of the things that he did wrong. He was very definitely a human being. He struggled with so many things. Most of the Psalms that you read, he talks about the things that he struggles with.
Besides the Bathsheba incident, what do you pick up that he struggled with?
He was afraid a lot of times. You read some of the Psalms and he describes being afraid. He was uncertain about what he was supposed to do, where he was supposed to go.
Of his calling or of what God wanted him to do, or what are we talking about?
I think he was uncertain too, even about who he was. You know, I mean, why would Yahweh pick me? You know, what's special about me? Why am I supposed to do these things?
That was not humility, that was actually just fear.
I think in many ways, yes, it was. It fits in with what we know of happened in his life. You know, it fits in with other things that he wrote in the Psalms, where particularly when he's talking about being a warrior, I mean, he describes being very afraid.
But as a minister, okay, because that's my background, my profession, I have to throw this out to you. So often in the pulpit, we have heard David postured as an individual who is brave, courageous. We always go back to the lion, the bear, all that, But what I hear you saying is, as an adult, maybe the more he saw the challenge that God was putting in front of him, that was difficult for him, that there were some fear factors.
I don't think we can get around it. You know, I mean, he presents it in the Psalms. You read some of the Psalms that describe various points in his life. And he struggled a lot with that. It was not always easy for him to trust the Lord, for him to say, God is going to take care of me. And that, to me, makes him very valuable as a character, because that's something that we struggle with. And so then we know, okay, here's a biblical character who struggled with exactly the same things. Look how God took care of him. Look how things ended up. And that can give you hope that in your own life, you struggle with those things, God will do the same thing for you. And it's a point of connection between the reader and the character. And if I, as an author, can make that connection, then there's so many things in David's life that become extremely valuable. And, just kind of pop out and you go, oh, this is what God's about,
Tell me some of the things that you found that God is about from what you obtained from learning more about David.
With David,
Sure.
God is about taking people where they are. He doesn't necessarily care what you believe about him, so long as he has an entry point. If he has an entry point, he will go in there, he will work with you where you are, he will teach you what he wants you to know about him. But to begin with, it doesn't matter to him. You can be, shepherd, king, prince. He works with all of these people.
Now that's
in the David story.
That's a little bit different than the way we normally work with people in church setting.
Very different, because we want people to be like us.
So we actually elevate ourselves above God when we play that role.
In many ways we do. And of course, sometimes the consequences can be very tragic. So that was very valuable to me, to figure that out about God, that he says, I don't care. I'll find an entry point anywhere you are and work with that. In another way, God teaches you what you need to know. David starts out as a shepherd. He doesn't have a lot of contact with other people. We know that. We're told. He was out there alone. And he ends up being one of the most inspiring kings that Israel ever had. That's a big leap. It took, I think, a long time for David to get there. There was much that he had to learn. But that's okay with God. He says, it's fine. I'll teach you. I'll take you through what you need to know.
So it was more than shepherding that prepared him to be responsible for God's kingdom,
yes.
God's people.
Oh, yes. The kingdom that David inherited from Saul would have been one based on alliances. It would not have been a coherent kingdom like we think of it. It would be more like a chieftainship, where he has to make sure that this tribe and this tribe and this tribe are all happy, so that they can follow where he wants to go, so that he can begin to pull them together to become more of a nation. That, of course, is politics, nothing but politics. And you need to be in that environment to learn how it works. So that's part of what he did when he was there in the court of Saul. He was learning, how do you connect with the people that are going to be your power base?
And this kind of learning really was more learning by observation. It really wasn't the kind of learning that we think of having a tutor or a deliberate mentor.
That's right. You're
Saul
watching.
really didn't care for him.
Yes, you're watching. You're involved. You're looking at what's going on. Jonathan, I think, was David's teacher and did an absolutely matchless job at teaching David what he needed to know.